In the far reaches of the galaxy, on a planet known as Xylophoria, there lived a renowned podcaster by the name of Zorblat Glipthorn. Though his name might have sounded alien to human ears, his passion and dedication to the art of conversation transcended the boundaries of species. Zorblat was the Joe Rogan of his world, and he hosted the most popular podcast in the universe, the Cosmic Chronicles. One day, Zorblat found himself facing a unique challenge. His producer, Glixia, had booked a series of guests who, in Zorblat's opinion, were less than stellar. They were a group of intergalactic fighters who had gained notoriety for their lackluster performances in the arena. Zorblat, ever the optimist, was determined to make them sound like the fiercest warriors the cosmos had ever seen. As Zorblat sat in his soundproofed studio, he couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. His first guest was Grunkar the Uncoordinated, a hulking creature with 6 arms and 3 legs. Grunkar was infamous for his clumsy fighting style and a habit of tripping over his own feet. Zorblat couldn't fathom how he had achieved any degree of fame in the arena. "Welcome, Grunkar," Zorblat greeted him with his trademark enthusiasm. "Tell us about your recent match against Blazorn the Inferno." Grunkar scratched his bulbous head, struggling to find words. Yeah, that fight, it was intense, you know? Blazorn, he's, one tough cookie." Zorblat leaned in, trying to salvage the interview. "Intense indeed, and I heard that you had a unique strategy in that match. Can you tell us about it?" Grunkar's eyes darted around nervously. "Yeah, my strategy was, to confuse Blazorn with my, unpredictable moves." Zorblat nodded vigorously, doing his best to keep a straight face. "Ah, the element of surprise. A brilliant tactical choice, Grunkar. I'm sure our listeners are on the edge of their seats, imagining the excitement of that battle." The interview with Grunkar continued in a similar vein, with Zorblat skillfully weaving a narrative of valor and heroism around the bumbling fighter. By the end of the episode, listeners from across the galaxy were convinced that Grunkar was a true underdog, a warrior who had overcome tremendous odds to secure his place in history. However, Zorblat's challenges didn't end there. His next guest was even less inspiring, Glibnix the Mumbling Mauler, a fighter whose incoherent battle cries and feeble punches had made him a laughingstock in the arena. "Welcome, Glibnix," Zorblat declared, undeterred by the awkward silence that followed. "Tell us about your journey as a fighter. How did you develop your unique fighting style?" Glibnix mumbled something unintelligible, and Zorblat couldn't help but cringe. But he pressed on, determined to find the silver lining. "Ah, the mystery of your style. It's clear that you keep your opponents guessing with your cryptic movements and enigmatic utterances." Throughout the interview, Zorblat transformed Glibnix into an enigmatic warrior who used mystic techniques to bewilder his foes. He painted a picture of a fighter who had transcended the mundane and tapped into the cosmic forces of the universe. By the end of the episode, Glibnix had become a cult hero, with fans eagerly awaiting his next mumbled battle. Zorblat's valiant efforts to elevate these less-than-stellar fighters continued for several more episodes. Each time, he spun elaborate tales of their courage and innovation, making them sound like legendary champions of the arena. His listeners were captivated by the stories, and his podcast continued to thrive. But Zorblat couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He knew that he was stretching the truth to its limits, and his integrity as a podcaster was on the line. As he prepared for yet another episode featuring one of these lackluster fighters, he received a surprise message from his producer, Glixia. "Zorblat, I've booked a special guest for you today," Glixia announced. Zorblat raised an eyebrow. "Special guest? Who is it?" Glixia grinned mischievously. "It's none other than Blazorn the Inferno himself, the fighter you've been praising for the past few episodes." Zorblat's heart sank. He had painted Blazorn as a fearsome adversary who had faced off against the most formidable opponents. He couldn't possibly maintain the facade in front of the fighter himself. As Blazorn entered the studio, Zorblat gulped nervously, but he was determined to face the truth head-on. "Welcome, Blazorn," Zorblat said with sincerity. "I must admit that we've been discussing your fights on the show recently. Can you share your perspective on your career in the arena?" Blazorn chuckled. his fiery eyes twinkling with amusement. Honestly, Zorblat, I've had some pretty lackluster opponents lately, but hey, I'll take the praise where I can get it. Zorblat smiled, relieved by Blazon's good-natured response. Well, Blazon, you're a true sportsman for taking it in stride. And who knows, perhaps your next opponent will be the one to challenge you like never before. As the episode continued, Zorblat realized that the truth didn't always have to be sacrificed for the sake of a good story. Sometimes, embracing reality and finding humor in it could be just as entertaining. With newfound wisdom, he continued to host the Cosmic Chronicles, sharing captivating stories from the far reaches of the galaxy, no matter how bizarre or ordinary they might be.